just because I'd been an athlete. And at that time, when I was an athlete, it was all about, lots of carbs. So our coaches would tell us, to eat bagels and, bananas and stuff. And it was a low fat craze in those days too. So we were doing a lot of that and went through many different phases of that and learned how to, eat cleanly and eat that in a way that really supports my metabolism and my recovery. And I just started learning there was so much more to nutrition rather than just calories in, calories out, like I'd learned before. It's not just about like this movement and nutrition. There's like emotions that come through. There's things that we want to address as also I was a trainer seeing my clients go through things. When they'd move, they would start to cry because these emotions would come up, and I wanted to learn how to help them navigate this as they went through it.
Allison Pelot, welcome to the Keto Camp podcast.
Thank you, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. This is your first time on the show, and I'm excited because some of my audience, listeners and viewers might know of your work. Some of them might not. So I'm excited for those who are getting introduced to your wonderful work. You have a brand new book that just came out February of this year. It's titled Finally Thriving, Your Guide to Empowered Wellness. I love the title. I love the cover. I love the book. And we're going to deep dive into all the goodness from your book and extract some golden nuggets to go deep on today. Before we get into that, Allison, let's get into your backstory. How did you even get involved with the health and the fitness space?
Yeah. So I started out as a gymnast from the age of 5 to about 21. And I did gymnastics all my life and was in a competitive gymnastics team and went into college, went on a scholarship and did gymnastics in college. So I'd been involved in athletics for most of my life. So that came pretty naturally to me. And after I retired from gymnastics, I started teaching gymnastics and coaching it because that's really what I knew to do. So I just went into something I felt like I was good at. And that I did while I was in college and getting an exercise science degree. I initially was at Radford University for 3 years with a scholarship in gymnastics, and then decided I was doing pre-physical therapy there, and then decided I wanted to change over to a full physical therapy program. So I looked at Georgia State University and got there, and then decided I didn't want to do physical therapy. So I switched over to exercise science and ended up graduating with an exercise science degree. And that really opened the door to, what I'd like to do and how I'd like to teach people about fitness. And it was mostly about fitness back then. I hadn't put together the pieces of the nutrition aspect of health and wellness, just because I'd been an athlete. And at that time, when I was an athlete, it was all about, lots of carbs. So our coaches would tell us, to eat bagels and bananas and stuff. And it was a low fat craze in those days too. So we were doing a lot of that. And it wasn't a very grounding diet, to be honest. And I'd look at my coach, he was a runner, and he was in shape and really big guy, very active guy. And he'd sit there, we'd be at like breakfast for the morning before the meet or something. And he'd have this big plate full of like bacon and eggs. And he's like, you guys can't have this. Only I can. Well, you're not supposed to have this because you guys are, trying to, be fit. And I was thinking to myself, that doesn't make any sense, So later, of course, I came to other conclusions. And as I grew up and understood nutrition much better. But in between that time, of getting my degree in coaching, I then decided to have children. So I had 2 kids, and I took time off work. Still was in the gymnastics, career, working for the YMCA, doing a program for them, and learned a lot about business through that. And it was a great experience. But then I took some time off to have my kids for about 3 years and didn't do any work at all, which was really nice. but it also gave me time to reflect on what I really wanted to do. And I'd had these professors tell me, oh, get into personal training. And at that time, I was like, I don't want to do personal training, because what I'd seen in personal training was people putting people on machines and just recording reps and sets. And I was thinking, like, that seems so boring. I don't want to do that. And so I came across, finally, after kids, I decided, okay, I do want to do personal training, but I want to do it my own way. And I started to, I did an independent contract. I was an independent contractor at this boutique gym in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. And, uh, I came across Paul Chek's work. I don't know if you're familiar with the Chek Institute.
Absolutely.
And there was another trainer at the gym who was using his stuff and had gone through his certifications. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly how I want to train. I want to learn how to do that. It just looks like it makes more sense. It's more functional. Because, I'd noticed like little things like, I was wearing tennis shoe, cross trainers in the gym, and my feet would start to hurt. And, I'd never worn shoes before in athletics. And now I'm wearing shoes all the time and my feet are doing, just hurting all the time. And so little things like that just brought me to, okay, what does it really mean to have a sense of natural wellness and fitness in your life? And of course, during that time being at the Chek Institute, I went through the holistic nutrition and lifestyle program that he has, and went through many different phases of that and learned how to, eat cleanly and eat that in a way that really supports my metabolism and my recovery. And I just started learning there was so much more to nutrition rather than just calories in, calories out, like I'd learned before. And realizing, I had to get my body back into a better place after kids and needed to learn how to eat to recover. So I got those basic principles of health and wellness during that time. And that led me to, go deeper into emotional intelligence through some emotional intensives that I went with this group called the Journeys of Wisdom group. And JP Sears actually got me into this because he was one of my teachers in HLC, and he referred me to that program because he was doing it, and it just brought in a whole new level of, okay, it's not just about like this movement and nutrition. There's like emotions that come through. There's things that we want to address as also I was a trainer seeing my clients go through things. When they'd move, they would start to cry because these emotions would come up. And I wanted to learn how to help them navigate this as they went through it. So, it led me down the road of that. And then I started to get into mindset and spirituality and apply that to what I was seeing in my own practice. And then also, of course, first to myself. And over the years, I've been able to also learn more about energetic healing and those kind of things, and integrate it into the physical and help people really navigate the physical and the energetic and be able to understand how those work together, how they interplay. And that was much of what I wanted to bring into the book. And what I share with people is what I've learned along the way, because my journey has been long and I've gone through many different teachers and different practices and experienced a lot. And so I wanted to give people some ideas on how they could experience it themselves to figure out really what works for them. Because as I'm sure Ben, as a trainer, you see people go through programs and they just aren't owning it. And they're sometimes expecting you to provide the motivation for them. And sometimes I was feeling like I was doing more work than my clients were.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's wrong with this picture? So that just led me to look deeper into this and how I could help people really own their own experience of their wellness journey. And it brought me to sharing all that information in the book. And so, yeah, that's how I got to be here, and there's also a lot of other stories along with that, but in a nutshell, that's where I am today.
It's a wonderful journey. I love it. And like I was mentioning off before we hit record, I was also a personal trainer. And it's interesting because you could understand this as a former personal trainer. Are you still doing any personal training right now?
Yeah, I'm doing fitness training. It's more so I call myself a body consultant now because I just help people. I get a lot of referrals from other physical therapists and chiropractors, and they send me people who are need to bridge the gap between being in physical therapy and then getting integrated into more movement that's functional and that translates into what they'd really like to be doing, all sports and those kinds of things, activities. And so I help people with those fine tuning aspects of fitness now instead of just the getting in shape. Although people, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to get in shape. I think that's fantastic. But many times when we do that, we skip over some things that really need to be addressed before we start loading our body up with lots of weight and really going hard with our workouts because sometimes we get depleted. And those are some of the things that I learned along the way is to start to pay attention to those little subtle things because that's what's going to really create the sustainability and the joy in your wellness practice if you can start paying attention to those subtler things. And so that's what I teach my clients is how can they start to tune into their body to really listen to what their body is telling them, right? Because that's very important. We don't want to override what our body's signals are telling us.
Yeah, that's very important what you just said about what the signals our body is sending to us. It's a a blessing. A lot of people look at symptoms and they think, oh, I hate these symptoms. Like, why do I have these symptoms? And of course, the list of symptoms we could list would go on into the thousands of things that we could list, from fatigue to autoimmune disease, obesity is a symptom, etc. But it's really a gift. And I'd love for you to explain how it is a gift for the body. This innate intelligence is so wise. And when something is off, or a lot of things are off, signals are sent, which is, kind of communicated through a symptom, and why we could view symptoms as something that's more of a blessing and a GPS guide that something is wrong versus hating the symptoms or chasing those symptoms.
Absolutely. And that's so important because if we get into that vicious cycle of needing to fix all the time, then you're never really enjoying the process, and you're not giving yourself enough space for your body to actually heal and recover and for you to even like pay attention to what those signals are. So first, so in the fitness industry, we're taught to really go, and no pain, no gain, those kinds of things that have been, that old programming that has been put in the mind, and so I find that in order for us to be able to really listen to the body, it's a matter of creating space with yourself so that you can start to feel into what's going on in your body and learn the process because sometimes I teach my clients there's a time of recalibration, especially if you're going through an alignment process in your posture, or you're coming or you're activating the body or awakening areas in the body that haven't been awake in a while, and maybe there's an old injury there, and we're working with scar tissue. We're trying to create more mobility in the joint. And so you're going to come to some places of resistance. You're going to come, maybe some pain comes up, but again, it's a process. And when you start to understand the process, then you can have more patience for yourself and more presence to, because the body, it has its own rhythm. So when we can tap into that, then we can allow the healing to take place and to create more energy instead of more restriction in the
And how
body.
important is it for us to be aware of what's going on? You mentioned to create a space. If you could clarify what you mean by that, is that in relation to like being aware of what's happening and not just going through the motions and trying to force things? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah. And oftentimes I've seen it in myself and I've seen it in my clients where we just want to do more because we're trying to push through something that we just don't want to face or see, excuse me, see in our lives, like we're trying to the busyness sometimes in life can be a trauma response. to what we're not really paying attention to or seeing in our life or not acknowledging. It could be something subconscious, it could be something from our childhood that we're trying to resolve. But until we start to create the space, meaning like prioritizing yourself, like I talk about in my book, creating just an hour, whether it's an hour a day or just some kind of time for you, so you can just be with you and feel what you feel like, and I give some examples in the book as well, and how you can also feel your own energy. And when you start to cultivate that relationship with yourself, then you can begin to know how your body responds to things. You can feel energy in your body, and you can also start to listen to what your body is telling you. But until we slow down in certain parts of our lives and really take the time to be present with ourselves, then it's really hard to do that. And so I often see people running from practitioner to practitioner for answers, when they could just be sometimes still and just maybe get some rest, and then create that space to hear the messages that their body is telling them. Of course, it's great to have a guide, initially a coach or somebody who can help you through the process, but eventually you want to be able to learn the skills to navigate that on your own, right? And so I think people get into a cycle of trying to look outside for answers so much that they just stop listening to themselves.
Mm.
So by just creating a practice, whether it's a meditation practice, I give a lot of examples in the book. It's called I call it a wellness date. So take yourself on a wellness date every day, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. But it can be anything from a sauna session, a meditation, a walk in nature. You could just lay on the floor, for about 15 minutes and just do nothing. So it's learning how to be. It's learning how to create a state of being in yourself instead of doing, because we're in a society where doing is celebrated, and it seems like that's really all it takes, is just to do more to create what you want in your life. But no one really talks much about the being and the behind the scenes work. And that's what prioritizing yourself gets you to. So sometimes that can be more powerful with the doing. When we take it, then when you do something, you can actually take inspired action, because you're in a place where you are very calm. And it's also a place of a clearer perspective, because sometimes we're just reacting to life when we're doing so much and not giving ourselves the space to reflect.
I love that. And, I see that over the years have gotten worse, of people just do more, especially, in regards to like entrepreneurs, but it's really just a
Yeah.
part of our kind of rat race here in the United States. And I found myself in that trap for quite some time. And I love the idea of wellness dates. This is something that I do. I don't call it the wellness dates, but I'm going to call it that now. But yeah, I take time to either go for a walk with my dog outside without any kind of audio, just being present, doing affirmations in my head, or doing some red
Yeah.
light therapy with a sauna blanket, or doing these things that feel really good and I'm present. And that could be different for the person, and it's unique to that person. So I love that you mentioned different things and you talk about that in your book. But you also said something that was very important, which is reacting versus responding. This is something that I personally learned from Bob Proctor. Are you familiar with Bob Proctor's work at all? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that, man. He's passed on now. That's actually a photo of him right
Oh,
behind me to
wow.
kind of honor him all the time. But I got a coin from him that I have here on my desk. And on this coin here, if you're watching on YouTube, on one side, and I want you to go deeper into this after I explain it. On one side, it says react and you lose control. And then on the other side, it says respond and you're in control. So when I find myself going through my day to day and stress happens or something unforeseen happens, and I'm in this kind of like sympathetic state, or what can I do next? How can I add more to my calendar? I always go back to this coin. I always keep it with me. I always have it here. I'm like, okay, am I reacting or responding? And it kind of sets the space, and I pause for a second and I choose a better path for myself. So how important is it to be aware of that react versus respond mentality?
Yeah, that's such a, I love that you use that. That's a great example of how you can continue to remind yourself to reflect because yes, there are going to be times where we react to things, but it's the awareness around that and how much you're doing that. And to me, reacting to everything in life is really a survival mode thing. So we're still in a survival mode when we're continuing to do that. That also relates heavily to blaming or the victimhood mentality, because then you're never really taking responsibility for yourself on all levels. And when we can begin to take responsibility for ourselves on all levels, then that really creates less anxiety. It creates more control of what you can control, like you say, Ben. And then you can approach life by responding how you'd like to respond. And so, what that does is it translates into you creating what you want in your life more intentionally instead of being pulled in all these different directions. And so it starts with our, our power of choice. So what are we choosing to do in that moment, right? And many of us, when we were kids, this is me included, I've experienced this memory recently, is the lack of choice. Like when we're kids, you don't have much choice, and some kids had more choice than others in their lives. But there's this deep need to be seen and heard, and then we as adults, we understand that we have more control of that when we're adults, but we still take that subconscious programming into our adulthood. And that can really drive our survival mode through reacting to everything. And so until we really take responsibility and choose what we'd like to choose and have intention behind it, um, then, then it's going to be really hard to create what the life that you want. So,
Yeah.
reflect on like what's working and what's not in your life and what would you like to change. And so and a simple practice like what you described is awesome. It's very simple, but it's just bringing you back to that awareness of, okay, I do have a choice here, and this is, how would I like to respond in this situation, and give yourself space around that. We don't always have to respond or react so quickly to things. We can give ourselves space around that, and that's also that time that you spend with yourself, that practice, it actually trains you for things like that in life. And then you become more present with everything. And that is also going to help with the response, how you respond to your life. Yeah.
Beautiful, Allison. It's so important. These conversations are so important. I know that my podcast, it's a keto podcast, but I talk so much about what you're speaking, your language, your book, because this is the work. This is it. I could tell people how to eat keto, how to go in and out of ketosis, the best intermittent fasting schedule, and all that's great. But until you do that inner work, the inner sizing, it doesn't matter what you do with your macros and your workouts and all that. It just won't work to the extent that you want it to work. And when I did landmark education, it
Oh, yeah.
changed my life. Have you heard of landmark before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did the full curriculum, and I learned so much from that curriculum, and I've gotten so many breakthroughs from it. But the number one thing that I always go back to when I think about my landmark education is the facts, meaning what happened, and then the story that we create after it happened. Perfect silly example would be, you're driving to work and somebody cuts you off. That's a fact. They cut you off. No arguing that. But then what is the story that we create from that? We could create the story that
Yeah.
that guy is a jerk. What's his right to be in the road and own the road? Why does he think he's, superior than me? And you can create all these negative stories, or you could create a story. Wow, that person might be on his way to the hospital. There might be something going on. Maybe he's trying to save somebody, but it's really the story that we create after that fact. And if our greatest ability is the ability to choose our own thoughts, why do we choose so many negative thoughts and negative stories? Why not create something wonderful that's going to serve us in that moment, and then eventually our future as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do that automatically. And that's because we've been trained to do that. I've found I had to come to grips with that in my own life. And I realized, oh my God, like I've been this kind of this way of thinking has been passed down from generation to
Yeah.
generation. And I'm like, wow, okay, I need to break the chain here. So how do I do this? And So the way I started was I just started these meditations. I would do a meditation every morning. I would never miss it. And it was actually when it was an Abraham Hicks meditation, if you've heard of her,
Yeah.
and it was just so positive, and just it put me in such a loving place, and I just enjoyed it so much that I kept doing it. And then it eventually just retrained my brain to start thinking more optimistically when, and I believe sometimes we feel like we tend to stray away from that kind of stuff, that the optimistic thinking, because we're thinking, oh, that's not authentic. What if I don't really feel that way? And I get that, because we do want to come to a place where we have authentic optimism in our life. We want to wake up like and think, wow, what could happen today? I'm so excited about the day. I'm curious what could happen. And so being open to that. But if we're in a place where we're feeling really negative, well, let's see what, first of all, why is that? And are you able to get out of that cycle? And so for me, getting out of that cycle was starting to kind of switch gears and go more positive. So I started off doing that, and then I what I call in my book the default mode. We tend to we want to first just observe what our default mode is in our mind, because our mind truly is a tool of creativity. It's helping you create everything in your life. It starts with a thought, right? But it's not who you are, and we tend to identify with the mind so much that we mistake it for being who we are, and it's not. It's just it's a tool that we use, just like our body. It's a part of our body that we use to create what we do in this dimension of reality. So if you realize that, it's something that to be trained just like the body. So it's you want to train your mind just like you do your body, to you want to harness the mind and create focus in your life with your mind on what you'd like to focus on. Because as we know, I mean, people know this, we've been told this for years, what you focus on flourishes, but are we really integrating that? Are we practicing that? Many times people are not, and I was one of them. And so what I did is ask myself, okay, what's my default mode? What am I thinking 90% of the time? And I realized that it was a lot of negative stuff, or what could go wrong. And I was always trying to, nip it in the bud, or, I didn't want to I wanted to, I don't know, cut it off at the pass before something bad happened. So I wouldn't allow myself to really experience joy, because I think, oh, it's fleeting, and I was like, where did I learn that? Okay, I've learned that through people I've been, grown up with in my life. And oh my gosh. So, in another program from being in the Southeast, I grew up in Atlanta, and it's like, you want to be small, you don't want to like celebrate your wins or anybody to, uh get, you don't want to, you look like you're being selfish or something. I don't know, something like that. And I thought, wow, that's weird. But I would think that. So, I looked at my thoughts, and then I thought, well, why don't I just switch that over and create, instead of saying shouldn't, couldn't, can't, won't, because those are all like conflict language that you use. So that what that does is, if you really want something, like let's say I want to create a lot of abundance in my life, and then you say, well, I can't do that, I shouldn't do that, watch those, how that comes up for you, because what that's doing, it's creating conflict in your consciousness, and is saying, no, you don't actually want that. So if you really want to create something, then it's very simple. You start using words like I can, I am, um I get to, those are really fun. Like, and you can feel it in your body. Like, how do those words feel as opposed to the shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't? For me, it feels like shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't feels like a door slams in my face. And the I get to is like exciting, it's like I feel this curious energy, this joy, like a tingling in my body. Like I'm very excited, so you can even play around with it like that. And then, like you said, with using the coin, just notice how much you're using those words as which are architect language. We call it architect language in the Enlifted coaching program that I took. They taught us about this as well. So the I get to, I can, I am, those are all like, that's helping you build the life you really want to build and create the reality you want to create. And the other words are the conflict language. So notice how much you're using conflict language in your life, and this includes talking to yourself, um, as opposed to the architect language. And that's really a big, big change right there that people can make. That's really easy. And it's just about being aware of how much you're using those words.
Well said, Allison. And the awareness is the key. A lot of people they're just not aware. Their
Yeah.
thoughts are just on autopilot. The paradigm that you referenced that we have developed over the first 7 years growing up here with our parents, our relationship, our teachers, etc., that goes right into the subconscious mind. And now you're 30 years old, 40 years old, 70 years old. And what you learned as a kid is still going on autopilot until you kind of break that cycle like you did. And you're aware that it's happening. And then you choose a different path for yourself. And it's really cool because human beings could do that, but animals cannot. I mean, animals don't have the ability to kind of choose their thoughts. They're just going through their emotion. We have the ability as human beings to actually create different thoughts and choose better thoughts. And if the average person has about 60,000 thoughts per day, and you're talking to yourself all day long, you want to make sure those conversations are serving you. I always say you are the most influential person that you're going to speak to today.
Exactly.
It's the conversations you're having as you're brushing your teeth, doing dishes, walking your dog. It's those conversations that really lead to your habitual behavior. So when you become aware of those conversations and you start choosing better thoughts, it doesn't happen overnight, but over time,
Right.
you change the paradigm, you create new neural pathways in your brain, and then all of a sudden things start to work out better in your life. You're happier, you're healthier, you're more grateful. And for me, the waking up in the morning, for so many years, I had first thing in the morning, I would wake up thinking, negative thoughts like, oh my gosh, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Just negative mindset right off the bat. And for me, what I noticed when I started to do this work that you're speaking of, and I woke up in the morning, then I started to think grateful thoughts, looking forward to the day. And it's really those first thoughts in the morning that really started to help me become aware that, oh, I'm actually starting to change this paradigm. It's those initial thoughts. And
Yeah.
that subconscious mind is very impressionable first thing in the morning. So that would be a great time to do some of those
Yes.
wellness dates, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I talk about in the book to how to make mornings sacred. So the best advice I have to give people is that that's a great time to just be with yourself. If you can't prioritize yourself at any other part of the day, wake up a little bit earlier and prioritize some time in the morning. It's also right after we're dreaming. So if you have really lucid dreams or visual dreams, you can reflect on those as well and even write them down. Sometimes I'll do that as well. It's kind of a time between the physical and the energetic. It's a really great time to tap into that part of yourself and honor yourself too. And so that's a great time to do that as well. That's why gratitude journals work so well, because people are they're changing their focus on what they want to create more of. It's not as much as getting like, I think we've been taught in marketing, like we need something. It's a scarcity mentality. Like, we need something from this person, so we're going to pay them to get this. But it's really about you creating more of what you want, more of the good things in your life. So when we start to peel the layers off and start to acknowledge all those good things, acknowledging what is in our life, not just acknowledging the bad stuff, but acknowledging the good stuff too, because we tend to just do the bad stuff and not the good. And so, start to focus on more on what's going right in your life and celebrate that through writing it down in the morning. And then you're like, wow, oh my God. Because oftentimes with clients too, I help them celebrate their wins because they forget all the things they have done. And they just want to keep trucking forward without reflecting on what they've accomplished. And I'm like, that is a big deal, because then if you don't ever look back on what you've done, then you feel like you haven't done anything, or you need more, and sometimes it's very satisfying and comforting, or it just makes your nervous system feel good to know, wow, I've done this. This is great. I need to celebrate that, and take some time to appreciate myself for doing that. So, And so I think that morning time is so special. I would recommend not getting on the phone or doing any social media first thing in the morning. Just be with yourself, feel your own energy, and do what your soul calls you to do. And you can listen to yourself a little bit better too at that time, and be directed that way.
Very
Yeah.
important tip. That morning time is very, very special. Gratitude has been a big part of my practice. I call it the good old vitamin G. And
Yeah,
you, and you
that's
said
great.
what you feed energy to expands. There's no arguing that. It's a universal law, just like gravity is a
Yeah.
universal law. I always say you might not believe in gravity, but if I picked up a pen and dropped it before your eyes, even though you didn't believe in it, you'd see it drop because it's the law of gravity. Same thing
Right.
here. What you appreciate appreciates, but also what you are angry about, resentful about, what you're focusing on in terms of what's not working for you, that also expands. So what do you want to expand for you? And we're not talking about woo woo positive thinking, like ignoring,
Right.
really messed up things that have happened to you. We acknowledge that, but we don't stay there and play the victim mindset. There's a difference. So that's where a lot of people think the positive affirmations and all that doesn't work because they feel like we neglect doing the actual work. Maybe you could talk about that, how we actually
Yeah.
we do the work, we acknowledge the stuff that's gone on in our lives. We don't stay there because it doesn't really serve us. So maybe you could expand upon that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And oftentimes if you're doing that and you feel like it's not authentic or you're not really feeling it, what comes up for you around that? Pay attention to that trigger, because that's a clue on what you could start working on. So for example, if you do have some anger, don't suppress the anger. Let it come up, and see what that is telling you, uh and then transmute it into gratitude that way. Like, find the lesson within that for yourself. Oftentimes, like you said, like, it has been given, the gratitude or the positive thinking movement has been given not given enough credit, just because it's the depth of it hasn't gone very deep, with people, because they're not truly integrating it. So I've found that, yes, we can talk about things all day long. We can talk about ideas, and we know all this stuff. We've heard it for years. But ask yourself, are you truly integrating? Are you doing the work? Are you doing a practice for yourself every day? And if you start to do the practice, then you'll find that it comes easier, that what you're doing is really bringing up things that need to come up, because they're blocking you from feeling that appreciation and gratitude in your life.
I love it. Such a powerful
Yeah.
conversation. So your book focuses on three phases of wellness: mind, body, spirit. We've kind of touched upon a lot of that already in this conversations, but I'd love to understand the thought process that went behind the book. I know that when all the things happened with COVID and things were getting shut down, you decided to dedicate yourself to writing every single morning. So share a little bit about your journey
Yeah.
writing this book. And that's the first question, your journey in writing this book, why you wrote it. The second question to tag to that would be, what would somebody expect to gain from reading your book after they've read it?
Yeah. So the first question was how I wrote the book. Is that what you asked me?
Why and how the
Yeah.
process,
Why and
but
how?
why did you
Okay.
even decide to write it? Because you were doing personal training,
Yeah.
holistic health coach, but why did you want to get a book out there?
Yeah, that is a really good question. Well, COVID hit, with the lockdown hit. And so I'd always wanted to write a book, but I never really knew where to start, because I had all this information over the years of coaching. I'd been coaching for, close to 20 years. And I thought, where do I start? I've got all this stuff to talk about, but I don't know how to bring this into a book. And so it was February 2020. I went to help my dad with a hip replacement surgery, and he ended up passing away. And I had to help him pass. I was the one who had the power of attorney, and I had to make the decision to take the respirator out. And it was a very sacred moment in my life. And my sister was there with me as well. And we experienced a big slowdown. I personally experienced a big slowdown in my life. A time kind of slowed down, and it was right before the lockdown hit. So, um, and I I realized at that moment that I was being busy to feel important, and it was almost like a trauma response for me to be busy, and I wasn't necessarily getting the things done that I really wanted to. I was just, I had tons of clients, and I was running from gym to gym as an independent contractor, and not really acknowledging the things that I wanted to do creatively in my life. And so that was a time when my dad passed away. Excuse me, I got something in my throat.
Yeah, and I have a
Mm.
follow-up question on that. So your dad, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. Your dad passes away February 2020, and then
Excuse
you
me.
find yourself kind of wanting to do more work to kind of escape, I guess, facing that and some of the challenges that went along with that. And then lockdown started to occur. So the gyms were closed and it
Yeah.
kind of forced you to deal with that. But my question to you is this, as that happened, right? Losing
Yeah.
your dad, losing work, essentially losing business and clients. Did you find yourself back then in that back to that victim mindset? Like, were you angry, pissed off? And if you did, like, how long did it take for you to bounce back to more of a getting out of that space?
Yeah, I didn't feel like that at that time because uh it just felt like it was how things were supposed to be. Um I can't really explain it, but it was just one of those things that happened where I don't know, it just seems synchronistic in a way. It's kind of hard to explain, um but he passed, and I felt like I definitely I changed after that, and I definitely had the inspiration. I had a voice that came to me like, "Hey, you need to we're writing a book." And I'm like, "Okay, we're writing a book." And then all of a sudden all this information just came down into me and channeled through me, and I started this automatic writing practice every morning.
Wow.
And for the first time in my life, I wasn't editing myself. I was just writing what came to me. And it was truly liberating. And so I was just getting out all that information that I'd been holding in myself for so many years and only telling like a few people at a time because I was one on one coaching. And I had this desire to share so much more and give so much more in my life. And I think that was a big part of it. I'd never allowed myself really to give to this at this capacity, and I never thought about writing a book as an offering that way. And so when I started to think about it as more of a gift to people, and in that way, I was like, it was much more joyful. And I didn't think of it like as a marketing tool or something that I needed to sell to people. It was more just, this is an expression that I like to express right now. And in itself, it was healing for me too, because I got to resolve my stories through writing things out and share what I had been holding in as like this information that was keeping me feeling like I was the person who knew this stuff, and only, you know, I don't know. It just felt like I just was holding too much in, and I needed to let it out. I needed to share it with people, especially during the pandemic where I just saw all this stuff in the media where just a lot of things about health that just didn't make sense. And I thought, well, let me help people trust their bodies again, and also learn how their body works, learn their body's technology, learn how simple this could be, just through these simple practices that we're actually not doing because we're always distracted. So I thought to myself, how can I help people or give them some tools to become less distracted and more focused on what they'd like to focus on in their life and in this kind of suffering that people are going through in this survival mode state. So I thought, what does thriving really mean? Like, I know it's been thrown around a bunch and people talk about it all the time, but I think we only talk about it mostly on a surface level, in a surface level way. And I wanted to expose people to more of a deeper level of subconscious, where they could thrive instead of just survive. And so, like, we're not just letting these old subconscious stories run the show. We're taking responsibility for ourselves on that level too, not just through the food and the exercise, which are very important, But once you can master those, it's also great to not just stop there, but to start mastering yourself in a way where you can become completely present with yourself and appreciate everybody and everything that you come across. And so that just creates more love in your life, more abundance, more of a capacity to to see what you're capable of and to explore that and to have more creativity in your life, have more curiosity instead of falling into a state of depression or lost hope, learned helplessness, those kinds of things. I wanted to really just give people the tools to do that in a very creative way that got people in their right brains more, because I felt like we have so much information and people are not really using it. Why don't I just give some people a different way of looking at this where they could explore it themselves and really reflect on their lives in a way that serves them and in a way that they could truly integrate this to, they could take it to the next level. So, so I broke it up into aligning the mind, connecting with their body, and then listening to their spirit, because I had not been talking a lot about the spirit in my work. And I felt like I'd learned all this stuff throughout the years that worked for me. And I at one point switched over to, okay, I have a very unique perspective, and I have a obligation to share that with people, so that there's everybody, we all have a unique perspective and a way we show up in the world. And it is really what you end up doing is serving so many people when you share that with them. And that's one thing I learned. And so but by hiding yourself, it really doesn't serve anybody. So I stepped out of that box of limitation for myself and decided that I was just going to go for it and see what happened, and do it in a joyful way that could inspire other people to do that for themselves. So that was the idea behind the book.
I love the idea. What a
Yeah.
creative download. And it's so needed in this world, especially the last 2 years, but even prior to that. And you're right. A
Yeah.
lot of people are going through the motions, living in fear, victim mindset. And I've seen this a lot in the keto and fasting space, because I have a lot of people who go through my Keto Camp Academy or get my books or programs, etc. And they'll follow the steps and they'll get some progress. And then, but some of them will resort back to their old ways, and they'll end up auto-sabotaging themselves, self-sabotaging themselves. And it's because they didn't change the paradigm. They didn't do the
Right.
inner work. So with your book, what I'm hearing is when you read your book, when my audience gets your book and reads your book, they're going to live a life more present, more abundant. They're going to be more aware. And in turn, that's going to upgrade your ketogenic journey. That's going to upgrade your
Absolutely.
nutrition, your fitness, and all the other things that you're doing, because you're actually reprogramming that subconscious mind. So what else would the person expect to get when they read your book? Like what's the number one thing you want the person to get from your book?
Well, I want them to have whatever experience they want to have. I want that really, my hope is that everybody enjoys it. That's really my hope. And because I wanted to make it an enjoyable experience for people, I wanted to give them an experience instead of just giving them information.
Mhm.
And I had one person actually tell me that I thought this was amazing, because I love the feedback I'm getting from it. It's always so different. And one person told me that it's like a choose your own uh, wellness journey experience, like I
Awesome.
was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So but it is like that. We can choose our own wellness journey. We don't have to do it just like someone else did it, or like the experts say it's done. And
Right.
like for you, Ben, you give people a structure, a format on how they could do it. And then I'm sure your hope probably is for them to make it their own eventually,
Yes,
right? So
absolutely.
that's what I want too for the
Yeah.
book as well.
I love that, Allison. All right,
Yeah.
last question. By the way, where can they get your book? I saw that it's on Amazon. Is there somewhere
Yeah.
else you want to go, or is Amazon the place?
It's most accessible on Amazon, but it's at all bookstores right now. I'm getting ready to put out an audiobook. So that launches in June, and I'm very excited about that. I had a lot of people request the audiobook, and
Yeah.
I narrated it myself, so it's my
Awesome.
voice. And that was another thing that I was like, oh my God, I've never done this before. I didn't know, what went into that. And so it took 5 months, but I'm very proud of it because it was something I was open to learning about, and I learned so much from it, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm proud of you too. I mean,
Thank
as a
you.
fellow author who's also narrated my last book,
Oh,
I
so
can tell
.
you it is a grueling learning process. It took
It
me
is.
9 months to do mine.
Oh
So
gosh,
I
yeah.
so much respect to the authors that narrate their own book. So that's awesome. And you're right. A lot of people are more some people like to listen versus reading, and it's good to have both options because you could reach more people. So it's available at
Exactly.
bookstores. That's probably the better place if you could support your local bookshop. Great. If not, you could go to Amazon. We'll drop a link down below. Two final questions for you.
Sure.
One question is this: Paul Chek, you've done his work. I saw that you were on his podcast a couple of times. Pretty cool to have him interview you. I imagine.
Yeah.
Paul Chek also, changed my life with his work when I discovered him back in 2013 or so. I was
Yeah.
transitioning from a vegan diet a year and a half, realizing how bad it was for me. And Paul Chek and his work helped open my eyes to that. So I love Paul Chek's work. He's like the godfather of holistic health, if you will. So my question is this: what is the number one thing that you've learned from Paul Chek?
First of all, I'm very grateful for Paul Chek. He really changed my life as well, and he is a good friend as well. He's really got a great heart, and he's an amazing person. Uh, yeah. And I forgot your question already. Sorry.
What's the number one thing that you've learned from Paul Chek?
Oh, the number one thing. Yeah. So, well, I think for me, he really got me started with he got me started with the clean eating. So I had no idea any difference between organic and conventional before I read his book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. And he taught me the, foundational, 6 foundational health principles that I live to, that I go by to this day. I always go back to that. And that's what I recommend people do is always go back to your foundational principles. That's what they're there for. That's what the structure is there for. And then from there, you can be more creative if you have that structure. But until you really put those into practice, it's hard to come from a very grounded place. So that's one of the biggest teachings he taught me, amongst many, many other things. I think I also had my creative, I don't know. I didn't realize like I wasn't being creative or I wasn't acknowledging my inner child and my creativity before I took his HLC level 3. We were in this art class, we were doing art, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do anything. I don't know what to draw. And no one's telling me what to draw. And I realized at that point, oh my goodness, like what's wrong with this picture? I should, I should, I can, do this. And it's just a matter of me giving myself permission to express what I'd like to express. And that's how the book came about, is that I gave myself permission to make mistakes. I gave myself permission to play. I gave myself permission to explore and learn. And so when we're coming from a place of needing to know everything before we really know everything, then that stifles us in our creativity. What I've learned from Paul is that, uh, you don't have to know everything. You can start in a place of just trying and getting curious and having that childlike curiosity and wonder about life. And that's really what it's about.
I love that answer. And
Yeah.
I hope everybody caught what just happened with your paradigm, right? You said, I should be able to do this. And then you said, oh,
Yeah.
I get to, you're doing the
Yeah.
work. And same thing with me. I'm doing the work too. And it still happens to me to this day. I need to go work out today. No, I get
Right.
to go work out today. Right. So as you
Yeah.
become more aware, you caught yourself really fast, but I hope the audience got that too. We're all doing the work, and it's a lifelong journey. And
Absolutely.
beautiful share about Paul Chek. He's got some great work. I mean, his book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, classic to this day. And that book
Yes.
is old, right? It's been around for a
Yes.
while.
I still recommend it to people
It's
because
just one of
it's a
those
great
books.
book. Yeah.
Stands the
Yeah.
test of time. Final
Yes.
question, vitamin G, gratitude. What are you grateful for today, Allison?
Well, I am grateful to be talking to you, Ben, and being on this podcast and having the opportunity to get to, reach your audience and talk to your audience and share all this with them too, because this is really an honor. So thank you so much.
It's been
Yeah.
my honor as well. Thank you for serving me and my audience. And you have some great work. So your book is called Finally Thriving, Your Guide to Empowered Wellness. We're going to put a link for the Amazon purchase down below. It'll be available very soon on Audible as well. And your website is pureenergypdx.com. You're in Portland. So if y'all are in
Yeah.
Portland listening or watching, your husband has 2 burger restaurants, Dick's Primal Burgers. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. Yep.
Dick's Primal
Grass-fed
Burgers.
burgers.
And it's like grass fed. It's the way to do it. So go check them out. I will when I'm in Portland. You also have an awesome podcast, which is called Integrate Yourself, integrating all aspects of health in your life, which I'm grateful to be on very, very soon.
Yes.
Anywhere else you would like for the keto campers, my audience, to go check you out?
Well, I also have a website for the book, which is called finallythrivingbook.com. And that also has all the resources for the book. It has meditations, a vocal toning session on there, also some exercises that I reference in the book that people can refer to. I didn't want to put pictures in the book. I just wanted to give people a video that they could see. So I have a reference in the book for that. And as well, yeah, and my Finally Thriving program, which is going to be a companion program to the book, which will be coming out very soon. So if anybody in your audience wants to take that wellness journey, kind of have a wellness experience and really have a joyful time with a very supportive group, that we're going to go into all aspects of health, and that I really took out the parts in the book that I felt like people could integrate more in their life. And we're going to do a 12-week coaching, and it's a course and coaching program. So you'll be doing a live group coaching session with me once a week during those 12 weeks. And you get a course that goes with it that you can go through weekly.
Brilliant. I love that. Is that on your website?
It
will be
is
soon, or is it there right now?
Yeah, it's on there, and then they can sign up for a discovery call, and we can talk about it more and get them signed up as well.
Awesome. We'll put all that
Yeah.
down below, including finallythrivingbook.com and your Instagram and your social media. We'll put all that down below. So if you're listening on the podcast, you could find it down below in the resources section. If you're watching on YouTube, same thing, you'd find it down below. Allison, I want to acknowledge you for doing the work and sharing your gift with the world. It's beautiful what you've done and what you're going to do. I think it's just so wonderful. I love how authentic you are and how you just showed up and really crushed this interview, and grateful that you came here and shared your brilliance with my audience. So thank you for doing the work and for sharing it with the world.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and it's really great to connect with you.